An introvert 20-year-old man, charmed by his new neighbor who is very beautiful and charming, without knowing the age of the woman, is 247 years old. Before the meeting, a young man named Cameron was having a wet dream with Diani, who has been his target since high school. So when he woke up, he was also disappointed, because the unboxing activity was just a nightmare. That morning, his parents advised Cameron to prepare for his future while on vacation for this month, whether it's working in his field, or other jobs that he likes. Because of the wet dream, Cameron was late to work at an ice cream shop, so Lenny, who was the manager there, was angry with him. As we know, abroad, there are students who spend their vacation working as carpenters, and one of them is Cameron. Meanwhile, outside Cameron's house, a woman with a French guitar body bag appeared and became Cameron's new neighbor. Back to the ice cream shop, where Lenny asked her to have dinner tonight, but she refused because she had a crush on Diani. Lenny, who knows that Diani is beautiful, but suspects in his opinion, doesn't believe Cameron's words, and finally asked to be sent a photo as proof. After returning from work, so as not to be called a liar, Cameron came to Diani's house, and quietly wanted to take a picture of him relaxing on the page. However, without being suspected, Chad and Jason, who have been bullies since Cameron was still in high school, beat him up and then threw Cameron's cell phone. Diani, who heard the commotion, immediately helped Cameron, and Chad told him that Cameron wanted to take a picture of him quietly as a material. However, Cameron pretended to refuse, and when he wanted to prove it, his cell phone was crossed, so it didn't work at all. The night after arriving home, Cameron peeked at an amazing view from across the window of his room, namely his new neighbor who was changing clothes. Without being suspected, the act was known by the woman, so she panicked and immediately went down to dinner with her parents. A few moments later, someone rang the doorbell, and Cameron panicked when his new neighbor came. However, after being opened, the woman replaced Diani, who confused Cameron and couldn't say anything. That night, Diani asked him out to a place to eat, to accompany him, who was bored at home. It should be noted, even though Cameron had feelings for that beautiful Diani, Cameron had never expressed his feelings, so Diani only considered him as a friend. A few moments later, his second high school friend named Martin appeared and Diani coded him so that Cameron wouldn't call Martin. Both Diani and Martin looked awkward when they met, so Martin hurriedly left. Cameron was confused, asking why, but Diani still didn't want to tell him. After taking Cameron home, Diani finally explained his problem to Martin, which happened while they were still in high school. At that time, Diani asked Martin out to a party, which was also hosted by Martin. But without being suspected, Martin didn't come, and until now his reason is unknown. Hearing what broke his heart, Cameron was confused to respond, and suddenly, he saw his neighbor staring, so Cameron went straight home. In his room on the upper floor, he again saw his neighbor staring at him. When he was confused, Cameron was surprised by a woman's voice from behind, who turned out to be his neighbor who had suddenly moved into his room. The woman scolded him because she dared to peep, and Cameron immediately apologized because he thought, which fish would refuse to be given a cat? Although Cameron had admitted his mistake, the woman still didn't want to go and forced Cameron to take her to a place as a form of punishment. Having refused for reasons that were not smooth driving a car, Cameron finally obeyed the woman's wish, after being threatened to file a complaint about peeping at his parents. A few minutes later, they arrived at a factory, and the woman named Victoria asked for a car key so Cameron wouldn't go home first. Cameron also saw a stranger asking Victoria to come in, and thought that Victoria was a member of the midget who was doing his state duty. However, not long later, Cameron was scared when the stranger appeared with a broken arm on his shoulder, and also screamed for help. After locking his car, blood was seen in the car window, and without helping the stranger, Victoria appeared in the form of a vampire and immediately sucked his blood to death. On the way home, Cameron was amazed at what he had just seen, but Victoria only smiled, while threatening to do the same if Cameron refused her order. After arriving home, Victoria reminded him with a slightly threatening tone, to take him to another place the next night, and kiss him before going home. The next morning, her father called to ask for Cameron's car key, who immediately wanted to be answered honestly by Cameron. Unexpectedly, Victoria appeared to cut the conversation, while introducing herself as a new neighbor to Cameron's father, and made up a lie about the car key. Victoria said that last night there was a vampire who hit her car until the animal was paralyzed, but finally woke up and left. After his father believed that story, Victoria asked for permission to Cameron to be her temporary driver, to go around this area, with the intention of giving him a salary that made his father happy to allow it. At work, Martin met Cameron to ask for help to get closer to Diane, and explained that he didn't get excited because he was too excited to see Diane's perfection. Confident that the relationship between Martin and Diane would not go well, Cameron also expressed his request for help that made Martin dance like a loser. At night, according to Victoria's task, Cameron took him to another place, and shortly after, someone fell from the top floor and caused his car window to be hit by a blood splatter again. Although Cameron seemed panicked, Victoria remained calm while enjoying the blood in his mouth, and then Cameron cleaned his window before going home. After arriving home and in his room, Cameron was surprised by Victoria's appearance suddenly beside him. And said he wanted to explain something. The woman explained that she was a vampire, 247 years old, and another group of vampires killed the man she loved in 1980 because she refused to join the group. Because of her lover's death, Victoria decided to kill all members of the group as a form of revenge. Hearing that the two victims were not humans, Cameron smiled happily and got more excited because of the action, like in the movie, and then Victoria went home without unboxing. The next morning, Martin suddenly entered his room and asked for further help in approaching Diane, who was then helped again. On the night of the day when he brought Victoria back, Cameron enthusiastically asked how many more vampires had to be executed, and Victoria replied that there were only 2 left, and the last one was the main culprit who killed her lover. After arriving at the station, Cameron decided to join in while posing like James Bond, which made Victoria angry because she had been asked to wait in the car. Finally, Victoria found the vampire's target, who was working as a Satpam, and the old man realized that he was being targeted. Because the Satpam vampire pulled out a gun, Cameron also tried to help Victoria so that he was shot until he was buried on the floor. Fortunately, after Victoria eliminated the vampire, Cameron woke up and said that he was just pretending to be dead so that Victoria could attack him. However, Victoria refused, and explained that the action could very well kill Cameron, and reminded Cameron that Victoria was a vampire with superpowers, while Cameron was not. After Victoria asked him not to make trouble again, Cameron asked for a day off because the next night, he wanted to accompany Martin, who wanted to have a fight with Diane, which was then allowed. The next day at work, Lisa, who was his co-worker, invited Cameron to a concert, but unfortunately, it was rejected without Cameron realizing that Lisa liked him. In the afternoon after work, according to his promise to Martin and Diane, Cameron accompanied the two of them who were having their first fight, and became the intercom when they were talking. When Cameron wanted to go so that the two of them could be more intimate, they reflected on asking not to because if there was no Cameron, the atmosphere would be very tense. Diane, who was also grumpy, decided to go to the toilet, and soon after, Victoria, who seemed to have noticed, appeared to help Cameron, who had been wanting to leave, and made Martin angry. After successfully leaving, Victoria asked the girl who had just gone to the toilet, and Cameron was honest that Diane had been his target since high school. When he was asked why he wanted to help Martin, Cameron replied with confidence that Diane would definitely refuse. After walking around together until dark, Cameron stopped to show his workplace, and happened to find 2 people who always bullied him. Victoria also intended for the 2 young men not to bully Cameron anymore, by going down and admitting to them that she was Cameron's girlfriend. Because the bully soul had not yet faded, she also intimidated Cameron, so Victoria asked the 2 of them to fight so that the problem would be solved that day. Although Cameron fell a few times at first as a result of a punch in the face, in the end he won, while Victoria gave advice according to her life experience as a vampire, by asking Cameron to hit Chad repeatedly. Because of the victory, Victoria asked the two young men not to bully Cameron anymore. On their way home, Cameron felt pain in his hand, and Victoria gave him a liquid taken from a bottle, which is capable of healing any wound. But after being drunk, Cameron panicked when he was told that the liquid was Victoria's blood, and thought he would become a vampire who was immediately rejected. Unexpectedly, after his body recovered quickly, the healing liquid had a side effect, which was to increase Cameron's bruise, so that when in the room, he tried to get it out while imagining his body. Suddenly, Victoria appeared beside him and whispered, as if she was ready to shelter so that Cameron could not refuse the situation. But before getting there, her father came in at the wrong time to ask something, and then uniquely apologized to the two of them for interrupting. That made Cameron stop his actions, and revealed that his heart belonged only to Diane, so Victoria was upset because it didn't happen. The next morning, Martin was disappointed with Cameron, who had left him alone when he had a fight with Diane, so that the fight broke because the conversation became very rigid. Not to be blamed, Cameron immediately argued that maybe Martin's relationship with Diane could not be continued, and then went to work. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Victoria seemed to find Diane, who was working at a clothing store, pretending to be a buyer. At break time, Cameron told Lisa about Martin's relationship with Diane, and thought that he was too far away to make others happy, while forgetting about his own happiness. Hearing this, Lisa again tried to invite him to a concert the night after, with the excuse of letting go of the fatigue that was undoubtedly caused by Cameron. The night after he was ready to meet Lisa, Cameron was surprised by the presence of Diane's car, who was visiting Victoria's house, so he was curious. When peeping from the lower window, he saw that Diane was already close to the vampire woman. And not only that, they both ate oranges in Victoria's room. Because of the surprising event, Cameron forgot about his promise to Lisa, which made Lisa very disappointed to be alone there. In the morning after Diane returned, Victoria teased him and felt happy because his plan to make Cameron jealous had succeeded. Unexpectedly, Cameron resisted and did not want to see her off again, which made Victoria furious and threatened to kill Cameron if he didn't see her off. Realizing that this problem had to be solved immediately, Cameron decided to be really serious in dating Martin and Diane, so that Diane would no longer be in a relationship with Victoria. So that everything went smoothly, he resigned from his job, but unexpectedly, Lisa hit him because Lisa had been left waiting that night. After being at home, his mother bought a new cell phone that he immediately used to help Martin when he talked to Diane, that is, by using earphones, and Martin was told to follow all his words. When carrying out the plan, Diane finally ignored Martin because of his romantic words, and then Martin took him to the city park for the unboxing process. After hearing the conversation, Cameron was jealous and wanted to stop both of them because his feelings for Diane could no longer be covered. However, while at the car park, Diane whispered to Martin's earphones for Cameron, saying that Martin had already got it while throwing away the earphones. Without being suspected again, it turned out that Diane did not intend to unbox it, but to bite her neck, which showed that Diane had been a vampire while looking at Cameron. When escaping to work to ensure Lisa's safety, Diane found him and showed that Martin was still alive while giving him a reason to bite. Because Martin really wanted great power, Diane also sincerely transmitted the vampire's abilities so that Martin would trust himself more in socializing. Cameron was disappointed because Diane had not told him who he was, making Diane apologize and excuse if he was afraid Cameron went away when he knew he was a vampire. Because he was also hundreds of years old, Diane revealed that all the men who became her lover were old and dead, so that she did not want to make Cameron her lover. At that time, Lenny heard the conversation between the two and watched Cameron kiss Diane. After arriving home and Cameron was in his room, Victoria appeared and said a surprising thing if it turned out Diane was the vampire's last victim, which in other words, Diane was the main perpetrator of her lover's murder. Because of Diane's closeness to Cameron, Victoria deliberately approached him so that Diane would be trapped so that it would be easy to execute. And it was true with her vampire abilities. Diane came after feeling that Cameron was in danger. At that time, Lenny, who was still silent, appeared and threatened to tell everyone that Diane was a vampire after her suspicion had been proven. Without thinking, Diane, who was emotional, immediately bit him and then entered Cameron's house. Victoria didn't take long to attack Diane using a special sword without listening to what Diane wanted to say as a form of retaliation against her lover, so that a fierce battle took place there. When Victoria was cornered, Diane told the actual incident that the murderer of her lover was not herself. On the contrary, Diane intended to help Victoria's lover when it was urgent, so that she had to be thrown by her group. Hearing the truth, Victoria apologized and planned to form her own group with Diane. When everyone wanted to leave the city, including leaving Cameron forever, Diane kissed him for the last time and said goodbye. But before they left, Lenny, who also joined because he had become a vampire, handed over his position as the ice cream shop manager to Cameron and asked him to work with Lisa. The next morning, Cameron met Lisa to apologize for all his mistakes and told her about the incident he went through in this month with the vampire. Although Lisa treated him disbelievingly, he still forgave Cameron. And both of them started the day to run the ice cream shop together.